hello everyone, and welcome back to Carbs and Coffee. I am Mr. Q. I've got Neil. I've got Niku. I've got Andre. We're all in studio today. So we can't bash the GTR behind Neil's back anymore. So we'll just do it to his face, I guess. Hi guys, how are you doing?
How's it? Good, and you?
All good. Good to be back.
Good.
You get to defend the Nissan Honor again, yes. So.
Well, unfortunately, today's topic is not going to include the GTR, so you're shit out of luck.
It's about drivers' cars.
Wow.
Okay, with that out the way.
Moving on swiftly.
So our
Unlike a
actual
GTR.
topic for today, our real topic, the one that we're actually going to be talking about and trying to stick to, not go off on wild tangents here. We're like, you know, we really should try and be professional about this.
I love how he says that and sounds to be and tries to be serious.
as if.
It's the tequila talking, don't worry. We want to talk about daily drivable classics in the sense of what kind of classic car could you daily drive, realistically speaking, and what a car actually needs to be daily drivable. Do you really need stuff like aircon, Apple CarPlay, power steering? Are these nice to haves or are these essentials for a daily driver? And where is that line for you? How much nostalgia can you put up with without looking for that little bit of more modern comfort?
Or getting annoyed.
And, you know, there are all kinds of other aspects that we need to talk about, such as the maintenance of old cars, the reliability of old cars, safety of old cars. But, yeah, let's just, yes or no? Can you daily drive a classic?
Yes, 100.
Yes.
I would say yes.
Okay, so we're agreed. Join us next week for...
But I'm going to answer your question with a question.
Oh.
What is a classic?
The phone is even out for this one.
So-
Jesus, I've never seen Andre
Okay,
this
so
serious.
what have you Googled as being a classic?
No, I'm just making a list for the stuff I wanted to say. Because I'm forgetful.
So you're a classic because
Yes.
you're old. I would say anything older than sort of 25 to 30 years. It used to be 20 years, but I mean, if you look at cars now from 20 years ago, they're still pretty modern. I mean,
Car
they're-
after 2000 can't be a classic.
I would say-
Maybe I'm just getting older, but it feels like a 2000
For me,
model.
classics is 90s.
90s and
yeah,
early.
90s and down.
pre-2000, I would agree with
Yeah.
that.
I would have even, it's crazy to think that 90s is even considered as classic nowadays. But I mean,
Yeah.
that's just how the times have moved, right? But for me, like
But
when I
is that
still
the
think,
times that have moved, or is it the fact that we're all just old?
yeah, we're getting old.
It's our
Yeah.
podcast, so we get to say that. We get to decide what's classic.
So, this car that came out last week, it's a bit old. I'm feeling very young and hip and with it, so that's old news. But yeah, I think you can totally drive a classic car as a daily car.
Yeah.
I used to, in fact, do it. I say daily drove it, but I had a 2-car garage which consisted of a Honda S2000, which I suppose you could throw into classics now if you want.
No.
Pre-2000
because too modern.
Modern classic.
Yeah,
It's a
modern
classic.
classic.
Yeah, because that's a noughties car.
Well, it came out in 99.
90s. So
What?
I would say,
Came out in
so
99.
I would actually say early
98,
90s.
99, something like that.
Early 90s.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had a Honda S2000, and then I had a 1982 Ford Granada, which was just, it was brilliant. Loved that car.
That's before the Ford caught fire. That one was
Yeah,
still-
that one didn't catch fire. That's because it pissed all its oil all over the driveway before it could catch fire. But yeah, I mean, that car was brilliant because it was comfortable, it was quiet, it was
Did it have an aircon?
easy to drive. It did have an aircon. It didn't
Impressive.
work, but it had aircon. It had power steering. It had power brakes. It didn't overheat much.
Much.
So it wasn't a normal Ford. What did you do to it?
I didn't do anything to
That
it.
it didn't overheat.
It was just, it was one of these cars that it used to belong to an old wommie. He had it under blankets in his garage, and the only time it ever came out of the garage was when he was towing his caravan. That was literally his tow car for his holidays. And he
For
didn't
once a
use
year.
it. I mean, he used it once a year. This was a 1982 car, which was, at the time that I bought it, it was a two-owner car. But for the majority of its life, it belonged to this old guy who bought it brand new, owned it its entire life, serviced it regularly. It had, when I bought it, 110,000 Ks on the clock.
Wow.
And it was just brilliant. I drove it to Stillby a couple of times. I used it as a daily driver. And the only thing that I could fault it on was the fact that it had a 3-speed auto. And
What engine did it happen?
3-liter V6.
So it also probably wasn't the lightest on fuel. for everyday use.
It wasn't economical, but it also wasn't like ridiculously
Not horrific.
thirsty. I mean, if I drove it nicely, I could get it down to like 11 to 12 liters per 100, which is,
Yeah, that's pretty good.
I mean, that's pretty damn good. But the fact that it only had that 3-speed auto meant that I was always looking for another ratio, and you couldn't really cruise faster than about 100 Ks an hour, because then the revs start going a bit high. It starts just making noise, and you could feel that the car was now working a bit hard to keep up that revs the whole time. So I reckon that car with a 4-speed box or a 5-speed box would have been a hell of a lot better. But as a daily drivable car, it was brilliant.
it worked.
Yeah.
Well, that's. I think I've got the answer to your issue, sir. It was the W114 Mercedes 220D.
W124.
No, 114.
The 114.
The one I have. I'm
yes.
going back. I'm going full on classic 69.
Oh, wow.
I was going to
69
say, they
model.
were like 70s cars.
Yeah,
69.
69, Bubby.
It
so
was the
yeah.
summer of 69.
That's not what I was thinking about, but okay.
Neil.
Come on, krook op in die
Bloody
kant.
Nissan crowd.
So yeah, look, my cars that I would have suggested, my car would be a bit too modern. My Spider, because that's a 96.
It would almost qualify on the
It will
year
almost
model,
qualify?
but from it is
But
too modern.
It's a
But
bit
it does
too
have the
modern, yeah.
mileage from a 1980s car.
Yeah, look, because that's what I wanted to say. I mean, I've been daily driving that fin for 6 years.
So yours is later 90s, but they came out in 94 already.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So
that's
as a modern, so I think that's an important distinction. You get modern classics, and then you get classics, like
Yeah.
historics.
Yeah.
So for me, anything kind of late 80s, early 90s to mid to late 90s, those are modern classics.
Yeah.
There's a cars that are still, if you look at them now and nobody knows what they wouldn't see them as classic. They were just older cars.
Yes.
But they
yes,
are
yes,
actually
yes.
almost 30 years
Yeah.
old, etc. So those are quite usable. For me, I've got, for a daily driver, I've got 3 requirements for a car. I don't care how old it is. These are the requirements.
Must have a cone folder.
No, that you can add later. It must have an aircon.
That I'm not worried about.
Yes, you don't have an aircon.
That's
as it
because
is.
your aircon's broken.
I used to drive cars like that, but since I've owned an aircon, I'm fine with it. In the summer in Cape Town, it's no fun driving around without an aircon.
No.
But you
Daily
see,
driving.
if you're not too lazy to press one button to take the roof off, you've got a full
But
aircon.
as someone who drives
I don't
convertibles
want
on a
my-
regular basis,
I want my hat to be stolen.
no, but a convertible in the summer, in the
No,
sun,
it's boiling.
it's even
boiling,
hotter
yeah.
than having the roof on.
Yeah, no,
If I don't have time to press a button, I don't have time to put on sunblock every time I drive to work.
Yeah, carry
Aircon-
on. What
aircon is
else do you
important to
what else
me.
do you need?
it needs to be a 12-volt car. It can't be a 6-volt car from
please.
the 60s, 50s. And it would need to have headrests. I don't care if it comes out with headrests. I would then headrest and proper safety belts. If it doesn't come out with that, I'll put in like a racing seat or something. But I mean, what I don't like is like these, if you get like even like a 60s Alpha or whatever, where you have these little, these kind of bucket seats where your whole head sticks out. For a daily drop, from a safety point of view,
you get rear-ended with one of those things, and you're going to be.
You get a one-way ticket to Whiplash City, and I'm not thinking.
So I've got the answer for you on that one as well. It's a car in my garage as well.
A Mercedes 114.
69 W114.
That doesn't have aircon, unfortunately. E03 BM.
That's a modern
91.
classic.
It's got aircon.
Yeah.
It's got a 5-speed box.
But you can't drive them; they're too dangerous. Because it'll get stolen on your way to work.
It's been hijacked 5 times since you've been sitting here.
Exactly.
Swap hands.
You used to have an E30, right?
I've just been offered the thing on Gumtree.
You used to have an E30, right?
Well, I'll see if I get to the garage if it's still there, and I'll tell you if I used to or do.
Yes. Yeah. No. Yeah, you used to have one.
Funny enough, I've heard of a lot of people with the E30s. What they do is they would rather leave their windows down, because it's more expensive to replace the window than it is the wires that people ripped out to try and hotwire it. So you'll leave the windows down, let them get into the car and try and steal it. But because it's more expensive to
what I would
replace the
enjoy
window.
as a something that would be great as a daily driver. So we've got the modern kind of classics, and then we've got the real the like early 80s and older. I think is kind of the cutoff. That Granada of yours, I would say is a classic. That's not a modern classic. That's a classic. Anything older than that. So as Alpha guys, there's a lot of 70s cars, late 60s cars that we really love. I used to own quite a few of them. And they are, if aircon was a problem, you didn't have aircon. They came out with headrests. They were all 12 volt, and etc. That was fun. Aircon they didn't have. You can add an aircon, but it's a hectic aftermarket. You'll need to make. It's going to be expensive.
No,
and I've thought of
major
doing
surgery.
I've got one of those. I've got a 1971 2-liter Alfa Veloce GTV. Lovely car, and they're actually reliable and all those things. And if it had an aircon, I could live with
reliable for an Alpha.
No, reliable for any car of its age.
And before my Spider, I was daily driving one. A 1750.
I used to daily drive a Junior years ago as well.
I daily drive a Junior, and that's one that's on my list as well. I would happily daily drive that because I'm not worried about aircon. I'm already used to it, so I'm already a peasant. And
you work in IT, so you smell anyway. So.
Exactly. So who cares?
Well, anyway, that's the association.
So I need an aircon because I don't want to smell when I get to work. I want to smell when I get from work.
Anyway.
So the Junior for me, I love daily driving mine.
Nico, I mean, if aircon isn't an issue, what are the things that you would need in a car to consider it daily drivable? Because at this stage, it looks like you'd be happy driving a boxcar.
Well, basically,
or a Beetle.
No, I need to at least be able to do like 160. Because I mean, if I look at a daily driver, I want to be on the highway and still be fine.
Because part of your commute goes through Mexico, right?
You see, exactly.
Yeah.
So
you go from Brackenfell to Mexico to Cape Town. I mean, that's the most direct route.
So for me, a daily driver must just be anything that's not a mission to live with, in the sense of, if I want to climb in, start it, I don't want to.
I don't want to crank the handle.
Yeah, I don't want to crank the handle. I don't want to double clutch the fuel pedal, choke here, choke there.
How do you double clutch a fuel pedal?
Somehow some Land Rover owner will tell us.
Is that a thing?
You heard it here first, folks. Double clutching the fuel pedal.
You double clutch the fuel pedal to get that car.
If you know what it is, you've heard of that pedal dance. He told us about the 86 pedal dance. I think that's it. You double clutch the throttle, and then it's all over the place, Roo.
Right, guys, I want to take a quick second again to thank our amazing sponsors, Master Panel Beaters. Master Panel Beaters have sponsored this entire season of Induction Noise, which has basically meant that this podcast is possible. Without them, we wouldn't be here. Master Panel Beaters is, of course, a major structural repair center out in Montague Gardens. And if you ever get into a spill with your car, someone crashes into you, a tree jumps out in front of you, anything like that, they are the kinds of guys that you want working on your car. Master Panel Beaters are approved by a number of major manufacturers. They get audited on a regular basis to make sure that their work is up to the manufacturer's standards, which is quite important these days if you consider that your car has crumple zones and crash structures and things that will typically get destroyed during an accident. And most panel beaters will simply patch it up, do the bodywork around it, and make it look pretty. But underneath, that structure will never function the way that it's supposed to again. Master Panel Beaters repair to OEM standards, which means if you are ever in another accident, that crash structure will still operate and function the way that it's supposed to, keeping you and your loved ones safe. And that's actually quite a major important thing that a lot of people miss out on. But as well as keeping you safe, the quality of their work is outstanding. When you take your car to them and they've waved their magic wand over it, you can rest assured that it's going to look as good as new. So yeah, if you need any kind of work done to your car, check out Master Panel Beaters on our Facebook page, on our website, on our Instagram feed, or just look for Master Panel Beaters on Facebook. They've got their own page as well. And chat to Steven and the guys, and I'm pretty sure they will put your car back to the way you want it to be. So for me, I think my requirements for a classic car to be daily drivable, I would say that I need to have aircon. Even if it's not the most effective aircon in the world, I would like to have some form of aircon in there. I would like to have the ability to cruise comfortably at 120 k's an hour. And I need enough power, and this is something that comes up quite a lot when I'm looking at, classic cars that are possibly daily drivable. But it needs to have enough power that you don't feel like a liability. Because
it needs to keep up with traffic.
I mean, I drove... a long while ago, I drove a 1957 Chevy 210 on the road. And that's not a car that I would want to daily drive, because driving it is genuinely hard work, first of all.
Yeah.
And second of all, you do feel like a liability. Yes, it's a classic and people have respect for that and they're sort of patient to sit behind you and whatever.
To think all the time, now I should move over, now I should do this.
Yeah, I mean, that car's not going to do 120 on the highway every day. It's not going to do 120 on the highway full stop. And even if you could get it up to 120,
You're not going to
want to be inside it, and you're not going to be able to stop it. So it needs to have at least some kind of dynamic ability that means that you can drive it safely and cruise comfortably at 120 k's an hour. And then the final requirement, which is something that does come up quite a lot. I mean, yes, safety is always going to be an issue. But I think one of the big things for me with a classic car that needs to be daily drivable is parts availability.
Yeah.
Because, it's very different here to where I grew up. Because I grew up in the UK, where you can daily drive pretty much anything you want to, because there's a whole industry.
Parts are locally made. And
not just that, but there's this whole industry of specialists. The guys in sheds who are making little bits and pieces for various cars. If you have some kind of weird exotic MG that was only built for 6 months of 1940 footsack, there's a guy somewhere in a shed who's making that specific little bit that constantly breaks on that car.
He will forge you a new manifold by this weekend.
Exactly. It's not that we don't have the skill set in this country for people to engineer and manufacture the parts.
It's just not the scale of it.
We just don't have the scale. We don't have the market for it. And the industry doesn't exist.
You will find a Wimquist in the Free State who can do it for you in his shed, but you'll have to schedule it about 4 months ahead after the next...
And it'll cost you a damn
Sounds about
fortune to
right.
get it done. Yeah. Whereas, give you a stupid example, we had Ferrari 612 Scaglietti that had a little problem with that T-bar reverse lever thing that the F1 gearboxes have, where the little pins, the locating pins on the side of the lever broke off because someone had obviously pulled it backwards without lifting the lever first. Now, that's a common problem on those things, and they break all the time because it's the stupid little plastic thing with the 2 little plastic locating pins sticking out of it. So it's not a particularly strong part. And there's a company in the UK called Hills Engineering that will machine you that exact part from aluminium, from billet aluminium. So it lasts forever. And it costs $900. It's not big money.
No.
Ferrari South Africa's solution to this problem is not replacing just that part, but replacing the entire gear selector module, which is an 87,000 Rand problem.
Yep.
So that's an extreme example, but I mean, that just gives you an idea of the kind of thing that you could run into with a classic car where something small breaks, and it's really just a little thing, but it completely immobilizes the car unless you can find someone who can replace that bit.
Yeah.
Or you can find that part somewhere.
Look, I think it's a good point. What you're saying is, one thing is a car reliable? And we often look at the mechanicals of it, right? So, the engine, the gearbox is bulletproof. That's great. But it's also about the rest of it, right? What if this breaks off? What if this lever or the door handles or whatever, And I think the more complicated the cars are, the bigger that problem is.
It is.
And I think even with modern classics, like you said, like we've discussed previously, something like a SL Merc of the 90s or a BMW 7 Series or something from the 90s or late 80s, those things at that point had more computing power, the 7 Series BM, than
a space shuttle.
than took the guys to the moon in the 60s. So, I mean, it is absolutely crazy. And, there's so many things that could go wrong, so many little things that can break, and so many little sensors and things.
And like I said, if that computer goes wrong here, you're stuffed because you're not going to get a new one. You might be able to find a second-hand used one on eBay. But if that exact same thing happened to you in the UK, there's an electronic engineer in his back garden with a shed who will fix it for 50 quid.
Everyone in the UK has a shed.
Everyone in the UK's got a shed.
Where do you think all the cars are built in the UK?
There's like this whole shed industry. I called it the shed industry. I'm sure there's a real name for it, but I always called it the shed industry. But because
We've got a different kind of shed. We've got load shedding.
we got load shed.
Look, but that's a good point. Sorry, that's a good point with the 7 Series, etc. Because something like a Lexus LS400 would have actually been like, imagine daily driving that. But if something goes wrong in that...
Yeah, but they don't.
That's a Lexus 400.
But
it's
they don't.
not going to break.
Yeah.
This is another consideration. So the first thing is, mechanically, things need to be bulletproof or need to be at least maintainable, parts, etc. Then electronically, is it too complicated? What are these things about?
Yeah.
Then, how well are these things built, right? So like you said, a BMW 7 Series of the early 90s, as a daily driver, I would not want. Because from a running it point of view, maintainability point of view, it's going to be a nightmare.
You will buy it every month.
You're gonna think what's gonna break next, and how long is it gonna stand for me to replace it.
That's the thing. Every time something breaks, it's going to sit for 6 months.
And you're gonna get to a point, like you said, where it's not replaceable unless I go find a guy with a shed in the UK and I import it from there.
Yeah.
And then that's going to take a while.
Can we import sheds?
Unless you import the oak in the shed as well, it's not going to help you, mate.
Full disclosure, like you guys have been like, how long have we been talking about this? And I've not had a single thing to contribute, and there's a very good reason for that. Because the closest thing to a classic that I currently own is my Taiwanese scooter. That's a knockoff of a very well-known Italian scooter, basically. But I mean, so you guys have got a lot of experience with this. So with this topic, I actually, I also for me, like the idea of owning a classic is almost like when you ask me, can you drive a classic? And I said yes. It's like owning a boat for me, right? Because I feel like you guys are the friends. You guys are the friends that you say like it's you guys are the guys that own the boat, and I'm the one that gets to enjoy it now and then, and because it's not my problem. It's like they say with a boat, what is the best days? Is the day you buy it and the day you sell it, basically, because of the maintenance and things you have to do. You have to put on.
How do you make lots of friends?
You buy a
trailer.
Buy a trailer.
Or a boat.
Like the closest, I mean, when Nico mentioned with the Mercedes, when you asked this question to us, I was actually sitting and grabbing a coffee across the web, and I thought to myself, what the hell am I going to say now? Because I've got no knowledge of driving older cars like that. But for me, as someone that's not been into it, I fully agree with you guys with the drivability and something that's fairly safe, fairly uncomplicated to service. And when I sat there and I saw was an R107 SL Mercedes, 1972, one with oak, what is it?
Yeah.
Oak green with like over caramel leather. And then I thought, I have no idea what the maintenance of this thing is, or if it's going to break or not, but I would daily drive that.
The thing about old Mercedes are they built like tanks.
Also, what I'm trying to say is, like, I think, like, for me, like, as a non-experienced person in daily driving classics, I feel like the safest entry into that would be something like a Mercedes or a BMW.
I must say, old Mercs are actually a really good segue into, it's a very good entry point into classic car ownership, because they were everywhere.
Yeah,
quite frankly. So there's always going to be parts for them, and
you get specialists.
Generally speaking, they're pretty bulletproof. And there are a couple of specialists who especially like stuff like the 123s and 124s that have an enormous following. There's always going to be guys who specifically look after those kinds of cars. In fact, I would love for my next classic car. I really want a 123.
So would I.
I really, really desperately want one. Probably a 6-cylinder.
280E.
Yeah, I'd like a 280.
They had head gasket problems.
Yeah.
They overheated a bit, but they were lovely cars. They were quick.
Well, it's not so much the quickness of it.
They had 140 kilowatts.
Yeah. But I love the smoothness of a 6-cylinder and the sound a 6-cylinder makes, an inline 6. They're just really, really nice motors.
230E is the Swiss Army knife. It does everything that you can.
They used to call them something like the camel of, or the what
camel of Africa. I don't know.
You won't go to if you go to a poor African country, you won't find one of them where there isn't Corollas and old Corollas and
123s.
W123 Mercs as taxis. That is just that's what works there.
Yeah.
A Land Cruiser and a W123 Merc, and they ride in the desert with them.
And as bulletproof as they are, their engineering is still fairly basic and easily understandable.
But they are over-engineered.
They're over-engineered. Yeah. But if something breaks on it, there's almost nothing that you can't fix with a bit of duct tape and WD-40.
They don't break easily, but they are becoming more expensive. They are becoming classics.
Yeah.
So there are things, if you buy, the most expensive Merc you can buy is a cheap W123.
Yeah.
Because you will spend much more than a nice one in getting that one up to standard.
Yeah.
They've got some rust issues over the years and things. To just get them kind of reliable and running isn't so bad, but to get them nice.
You had a 124 though, didn't you?
I've had a 124. My dad had a 123 when I was a student, a 4-speed manual. And it was a lovely thing. I loved it. That thing was just bulletproof.
So my dad actually had two 124s. He first had a blue, I think it was a 230E.
Yeah, it's a 4-cylinder. That's the kind of middle of the road.
Both of his were 4-cylinders.
Yeah.
And that was a brilliant car. We absolutely loved that car.
Those things handle so well.
Then he had a 230TE. And that was the coolest thing since sliced bread.
That's the station wagon.
Yeah.
They're very cool.
And I used to sit in the boot. I thought that was the coolest thing in the world, sitting in the boot of the car when we're going on road trips.
Did it not have a split? Did it not come out with a split tailgate?
No.
Was not that.
No. I don't think so.
You think of a Range Rover.
Yeah, for some reason. But those are cool.
There was an old
Merc
that had the split tailgate, but I can't remember which one it was. I think it is.
I had a W124. Yeah. So here's an interesting story on classic car ownership. So I had an Alfa Mito, a modern Alfa Mito QV Sport, great little car. But at that point, it was like a 300,000 rand car. And I was like, you know what? I actually remember the day. I was driving, I test drove the Harper. The first time I drove the Harper Type 5 at Killarney. So I took the car around and I'm like, you know what? I must get back into racing. Because then I haven't been racing for quite a few years now. I said, I must get back into racing. But I want to free up a bit of money. Because it's going to cost a bit of money to race. So I want to get myself a race car, but I do want to free up some money. So I'm going to get a modern classic. That's actually what I went through. You don't need a modern car. What do I need a modern car for? My wife's got a modern car. I am getting a modern classic. And these Mercs are bulletproof. I'm going to get a W124. I'm going to get a 300E. And I want an automatic because you did get the manuals. The manuals were very, very rare in those. But the auto was cool because it fits into the whole personality of the car. It's a bit lazy. It's a bit, wafting along. So this car, my dad went to buy the car. I just spoke to the guy on Gumtree. I saw some pics. Looked great, like low-ish mileage, 240,000 Ks, which is low for those cars.
Barely run in.
And I'm like, cool, no, it looks great. And then when I got the car, there were a few little niggles, little chip marks in the front and some rusty. It wasn't rusting. But it had like these little chip marks with a bit of rust around them.
Almost like surface rust of just where
and then the seats were a bit, they saw a bit of sun, so they weren't that great. There were a few little fiddly things that wasn't, but it was, I paid like 35 grand for the car footy. So it was, but I wanted to experience that a bit. Unfortunately, I had very bad luck with that car. I had so many issues. Radiator backed up. I had... the distributor gave some issues, but I do think that was deferred maintenance.
Yeah.
So all of these things are things that you could have been avoided, but it just so happens that I ran into all of these things. It started leaking a bit of oil, and with them, it's not just a case of like a Toyota where you're just like, hey, replace the seals and it costs you $1,000.
But it is an issue that you're going to get on a lot of older cars. Because the thing is, they get to a point where they get cheap, and people who can't really afford to keep them going can afford to buy them.
Yeah, exactly.
And they'll buy them because they're cheap and they're supposedly bulletproof, but they're only bulletproof if you maintain them properly.
Exactly.
And then they won't touch them for 12 years, and when they start giving problems, they flog them off to people like us who actually want a reliable classic, and then we end up having to catch up on all the 12 years worth of maintenance.
I need to be, if I'm honest about that car, I never got stranded next to the road with it. It had some niggles. I went to one of these Merc specialists, asked them to fix the stuff. And I once took it on a long road trip, and it handled brilliantly, like a high-speed cruiser.
Yeah.
Through the long sweeps, that car really handled so well. Neutral, it was really solid. And they still had those higher profile kind of wheels. It wasn't like, didn't have low profile.
And they were super comfy, those 124s.
Yes.
Well, there was the Autobahn around already at that time in Germany. Because if you think
they
about
were built for the Autobahn.
So it was
the
built
300Es and the 6-cylinder Mercs and the BMs. They used to go on the Autobahn at 535 BMs and those Mercs.
So they were built for high-speed cruising, actually.
Was out of the blocks. It wasn't the automatic gearbox held it back a bit, but you could feel that car would happily cruise at 200, 220 the whole day.
But even the 4-cylinders were like that. I mean, they had high-speed cruising ability. They just took a while to get there.
Yes, for sure.
I can tell you my 220D. It's like you have to wind it up, but you're quite surprised of how quickly you get up to a comfortable speed with that.
That's slow, bro.
No, they are slow, but
depends on what speed you're comfortable with.
But it's not like a Beetle that you're gonna get to 100 and feel like you're busy dying. You can at least still get to cruising speed.
You may just
like
die before you get to it.
I'm bringing that W114 here, then you're going to drive it and you're going to see.
So, but my experience with that Merc was a bit of I was very busy at work and everything, and all of these little things went wrong with it. So every second week, I had to go to the Merc guys to go fix something, leave it there for a day, whatever, work from home. And that was before the work from home things, and I was at a previous employer. So it kind of interfered with my daily life. And as a daily, it started becoming a pain because there was just hassles all the time. So that to me was kind of a bit ironic because I bought the Merc because it's bulletproof, nothing can go wrong. And the engine itself, nothing went wrong with the engine
No.
box. It's these little ancillary things around it.
But wasn't the 124 the one that was designed to have a biodegradable wiring harness?
That's actually an earlier one. This one, mine was the early 90s, the later 90s ones, and the C-Class Mercs. But in those years, they had
the biodegradable wiring.
the
I
ones
mean,
with the air, the ones with the mine was just before the air, airbags came out.
Yeah. I mean, that was just... I'd love to have been in the meeting where they thought of this. So, Fritz, we must make our cars more green. Let's make them dissolve over time. What is the problem with this? Like,
But I think
that was a good idea?
That's the thing that kind of like puts me off of the idea of owning or daily driving a class, because I think there's a certain amount of patience that comes with it, right? That
Look,
you need,
there
and
has
it's almost
to
like
be an understanding,
You have to,
and there has
there's
to be
limitation, and
there has to be a sense of mechanical sympathy, I think,
Yeah.
because you can't drive a classic like you drive a modern car. You can't just get into like. A modern car you can get into, you can switch it on, and you can rag the crap out of it.
Unless you get a Rapster.
Unless you get a Rapster. But a classic car, you kind of have to have a little bit of sympathy with it, and you have to sort of treat it with a bit of respect. It has had a life before you owned it, and you kind of have to deal with that. But that almost makes it part of its charm.
I mean, I don't own a class, but my car's getting on 16, 17 years old now. And the other night, if you look at these marks on my fingers here, I was replacing the boot struts. And it was such a freaking painful experience. Like, I was so angry when I walked out of there. Like, why is this
am I
so
not just rich
difficult?
and I've
Why
got
am
a
I
new
not?
car?
Yeah, exactly. Like, and I thought to myself, this is why some people just buy new cars, because they're not list to deal with the schlep of waiting for parts to come for 2 months, and then it gets there and you're so excited and you open a little packet and then you fuck it up basically because you put this, excuse my French, you put your screwdriver in the wrong thing, and then ding ding ding, something falls down here.
Tell us
And
how
like,
you
oh,
really
man.
feel.
Yeah, no, that's so I wonder sometimes myself I'd be able to deal with that, because I think I'd be frustrated by.
So I was very unlucky with that Merc of mine, though, because one of these things, and this is no lie. So I took it somewhere I think I had the brake pads replaced somewhere, and the manifold was welded up or something. So then it was this place in Brackenfell that did it. So my uncle knows this guy.
Well,
and
that was your first
I took
mistake.
it to some cheap spot there, and these
This
oaks,
oak in Brackenfell,
these
my
oaks have
uncle knows him.
No,
Is he a real uncle, or is he just like the dude that, call him uncle?
No, so these guys were pretty rough and ready. I was in the racing scene. They'll sort me out. No worries. I'm like, cool. Sort it out. And then the guy, I said, well, I'll need to get home now. And I don't think I did Uber in those days yet. So the guy said, oh, cool. They'll come. I'll drop the guy off, and then I'll go home and take him back with another car or whatever. Oh, no, sorry. He was driving. I was driving like the courtesy car or something. I was driving the Merc, and he was driving the courtesy car. I don't know what the hell. But anyway, we were driving home with two cars. And what happened was, when the guy was driving in front of me with my Merc and I was driving another car, as he stopped at my house, the rear window was shattered, was broken. So what happened was, what are the odds? So in our estate, we've got these huge pine trees, like huge, I mean like 100 years old plus. So what happened was, one of these little squirrels, what they do is they chuck down these big pine cones. But you get these pine cones they're not the dry ones. Have you seen like a ripe pine cone that's green?
They're solid.
They are heavy. So that thing fell off from a tree while the guy was driving in front of me. I saw the screen shatter. So it fell on the rear screen, and the screen just shattered. So then I had to phone around for a day to try and find a new screen. Insurance will pay for a new screen. Take 3 weeks from Germany, and it cost them like 30 grand or something.
It's more than the car's
And then
worth.
I found some dodgy scrapyard in Woodstock or somewhere where I could get a screen for, I think, like $1,000, and that PG Glass put it in, but they're also like, we can't promise that it won't break. And it was just...
Dude, just put it in.
Glass is actually an interesting one, because even my NC MX-5 that I had a real difficult time getting a replacement windscreen for that car. And, a windscreen is something that you have very little control over when you need to replace one, which is why you insure the damn thing. Because, you drive, a stone comes up, it hits the windscreen, and it's in its chops. But to replace the windscreen on that MX-5, we had to wait about 6 to 8 months to get one from Japan.
Basically, I had to go make one for you.
Yeah,
Next
essentially.
batch.
Yeah.
I think there's with daily driving a classic is, and I think you guys with the older Alphas, or you with the older Ford, you need to have a certain love for that car, that you can deal with the quirks, because it becomes this sort of like a bonding experience almost, and you're okay with it as well. I think there's nothing, the process of buying a classic, and that's why I always have gotten stuck with it, is it's not like buying a new car.
No.
Because you're just gonna get, if you don't like it, and if you're not fond of it, and if it's not like your childhood dream to have that, like a junior or whatever, I think you're just gonna get irritated with
But now
it.
here comes a question for you, Neil. I get where you're coming from with the inconvenience factor of daily driving a classic. So would the answer not be daily driving something like a resto mod? You know, a car that's got the classic look and the classic feel.
But then you may as well drive a supercar, because it's, I mean, we're talking about silly budgets there.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean,
that Corvette.
building a resto mod properly is not
Very
a cheap
expensive,
exercise.
Yeah. That Corvette that you had as a resto mod
like
was, for value for money wise, a good resto mod.
I like the idea of OEM plus. Like if you've got like an older, let's. I mean, because I love the look of the Junior as well. If you have it, like, I'd like to keep the looks the same.
Yeah.
But if there's modern conveniences in it, that maybe that just makes the drivability of it slightly better.
Yeah.
So an OEM plus, if you can call it something like that, I think would be pretty cool.
And mine is a bit of, I put on different tires. They come out 14-inch wheels. You don't get proper 14-inch tires, and it needs to have the right profile. So I change it to 15-inch wheels, so I get some bit wider, proper wheels. Probably drop it a little bit, because it just looks like it's riding on.
And it's already going to be much better, because modern tire compounds are a little bit better than what we had in the 60s and 70s.
My first Junior still had 70s tires on them. Those cross plies. So I remember
It's like driving on wet rags.
Yeah, I still remember driving home from Scalextrics the one night and going around roundabout, and honest to God, not going fast or whatever, but it was just that first summer rain. And look, the first summer rain in Bloemfontein, all those oils, etc., just come up. And I remember going into the corner at dude, it was under 60. It was under 60 going around the roundabout, and I was sideways going into it, sideways going out to it, and I shat myself. Because I thought, here I go, my dad's going to kill me, my Junior's going to be binned. It's like my dream car, now I'm going to bin it. And then I was just like, please, Lord, I just need to catch this.
It's something that seems to come back the whole time. If I can sort of tie up what we've been saying for the last little bit, it seems like, yes, you can daily drive a classic, and there's like this window of cars that would really lend themselves very well to that sort of thing. And it seems to me like we're heading in sort of late 70s, early 80s luxury cars. Because luxury cars from that period already had aircon and power steering, which are kind of the things that we want.
No, I don't want power steering. It's something that can go wrong.
It's something that can go wrong, but it's a nice to have. But they had aircon, and they were reasonably powerful, and they could cruise the way we want them to.
But they're too complicated. There's more things that can go wrong, like a 7 Series Beamer or something.
Yeah, but the 7 Series Beamer is like on its whole
no, I'm
thing on
talking
its
the
own.
first ones. I'm talking early 80s.
I'm talking like the early 80s
Like
and 70s, the Mercs, the Fords, the more simple stuff.
Ford a luxury car?
The Granada was a luxury car.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, the Cortina was for the proletariat, please.
Where did you have to stay to consider a Granada a luxury car?
The Granada was a magnificent thing.
I've offended him now.
There was an entire Top Gear episode dedicated to the Ford. What is it? The Cortina and Mondeo.
I think it was when the last Mondeo was made.
Yeah, so they had this.
Have you guys heard the song of "Ek het 'n beige for Cortina in my agterpjaard"?
No,
We're not from Bloemfontein. We have taste. But I mean, if you look at sort of more luxury end of the market from the 80s and 70s, I think those are cars that could conceivably be nice daily drivers. But if you look at the bottom end of the market from that period, stuff like Escorts, for example, that's not really something I'd want to daily drive, because driving those things, it's a little bit hard work, and they do feel like a liability on the road today when you're being passed by massive trucks doing 120.
If it's a 1600 and higher, and it's like a 80s Escort or whatever. I'm not a Ford guy. We know this already. But I think 80s. I don't know about the Cortina. They've got that V6 in, but if you could live with that, the Cortina or the Escort, I think they're fine. I think they can keep up. You won't be doing 170 or whatever, but they could do 120. You could keep up with traffic. Don't get to 1300 because you'd be in trouble. They're just missing the aircon. But I almost want to go. I'll rather. If I had to live with it daily, I'd rather go for a simple car and add an aircon to it. Yeah. If I had to pick the Merc, there are exceptions.
It must be said that adding an aircon afterwards can sometimes be more complicated than just fixing a car that had aircon already.
It could. But I'd rather, take a 70s Alpha, like a GT Junior or a Giulia, add an aircon to it. And there are kind of kits for it. Add an aircon to it. And the rest is pretty simple, straightforward. And it helps that between me and my dad, we've got like 3.5 spare of those cars. So we can get some spares of them. So that helps, of course, if your dad has access to spares.
I mean, I grew up with an Escort, like you mentioned, 1980s Escort. And funnily enough, my dad sold it, because that car was the one that did all the gravel road driving. And it was a fairly solid car. And I mean, now you mentioned something about the trucks coming by, and not that this is, so don't misunderstand me, this is not a classic by any means, but I mean, after that we had a Chico City Golf, and that was like the appointments out in the middle of nowhere, 1300 because it was quite high. And then a couple of years ago, I thought, drawback to that's the car I learned to drive in, and I've always, when I grew up, I liked the velocities, like bucket seats and all that. And I thought a friend of mine, his fiance, was selling hers. And when I went to drive it, I felt extremely exposed. And that's one of the things why I would feel like, I want something like a bigger Merc or something like that.
But
is this because you feel very...
There's more metal around you.
There's more metal around you.
The issue is
that's the
you
thing with
drove
smaller.
a thin box.
Yes, but that
You
car's
drove
from the
a thin
70s.
box.
Yes, yeah. 100%.
I mean, that car
but
is super unsafe. If you get into my Merc or even a Junior, everything feels a bit more solid.
But that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm trying to allude to. Is I'd rather want something with a little bit more metal. So it would put me off something like So in terms of daily driving, I feel it's also like then, what does your commute actually look like?
Yeah.
Driving from Gardens to Woodstock, then maybe something like a Mini or a old Escort makes sense.
If you do a lot of highway driving at 120 plus, then you're not going to feel safe in a Mini.
You don't want to drive that from Somerset West to town basically every single day.
Yeah.
So let's go around the room. You have unlimited budget to go and buy a daily drivable classic. Well, let's not say unlimited, but you have...
I wanted to say unlimited. I've got a quick answer for you, and it's done.
Yeah.
Because then I'm going...
A realistic
sort of, anything under 500,000, shall we say? Or where should we draw the line here? Say 200 grand? 250 grand? 300 grand?
Alpha Juniors.
Yeah, you can't go for a
Half a
Junior
bar.
on that.
Make it off.
But look, I'm
Okay,
actually...
let's call it half a bar.
No.
You've got half a bar.
Something realistic, but not over.
No, I'm actually happy to say I'll daily drive my W114, my 220D. I'll happily daily drive that car. It's comfortable. You can drive fast enough.
You've probably also spent pretty much half that budget restoring it, haven't you?
No. No.
How do you guys feel about the first gen Hiluxes? Sorry, I'm interrupting you now, Nico. But can it be Buckies? Can it be Buck? Are we talking about modern in a South African context? Can old Buckies
It's
become?
dangerous for so many reasons.
It is dangerous, and they are so uncomfortable. The suspension on those old Hiluxes was so hard. It's
they used to say that they outlived the owners, those Hiluxes.
It's because they killed the owners.
Because the owners died of kidney failure because things shake them to bits. No, those things were horrible. The ride on those things were terrible. They would last forever. If you're on a farm, right, Get one of those; it'll last forever. But on the road, they are really horrible. The handling is dangerous.
Yeah.
They are slow, all of them, super slow. I would rather get I would rather get like a 90s one or something, like a late 90s one, the ones without the solid front axle.
When they started getting a bit more civilized.
Yeah.
Sorry, Nico, I interrupted you there.
What year model was the S2 Avant?
That's early 90s.
Early 90s,
Early
yeah. That was like 90,
Or is it?
91, 92.
RS2.
S2.
S2.
S2 Avant. Porsche motor.
RS2. That's the RS2.
RS2.
Yeah, it's the RS2 Avant. No, that would be absolutely epic. That
Can
would,
you still get those under half a mil?
probably not. But I mean that would be an epic thing. But I wouldn't see that as a modern classic.
It's a bit modern
You
for a
can-
classic.
It's a modern classic, and the year model can almost fit in there. But I think it's a bit too modern for
Yeah.
a discussion.
Yeah,
But yes, that's kind of a borderline car.
That's
right?
kind of a borderline car, yeah. Because the E30 is a bit, my E30 is a bit modern as well. It's also around there, I'm
The
guessing.
E30s, as a modern classic, the E30 as a
Yeah.
car would be great, but the problem with them is just their
Their
ownership in South Africa
tend to
is
be
the problem.
stolen,
Yeah.
etc.
because
yeah,
they'll
yeah.
get stolen. A W123 Merc, I think, as a modern classic, is a fantastic car, but you need to know you're not going to buy a 30 grand one, and you're going to buy a 100 grand one or a
100 grand would buy you a really
is
nice
a decent one.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
nice one. And it's not going to be cost you as much as the City Golf to keep it running. You are
No.
going to, because things don't break that often, and they're easy to service and stuff.
Yeah.
But if they do break, you know,
Yeah,
and you need to know they are 40 years old. So
exactly.
yeah, I mean, you need to be
But
to
yeah.
know that you get some.
So-
points.
So to get
Andre-
yeah,
sorry, you-
so
were
to
you
get
still waiting?
back, Junior is out of budget. I would happily my W114. That's my call for a dailyable classic.
Andre?
I already said W123, but it wasn't my choice yet necessarily. I
Bean boozled
I
us.
think a very underrated modern classic is the late 80s, early 90s Japanese cars. This one for you, Neil. So,
Surprise, surprise.
didn't see that coming. Didn't see that coming, did you?
They were kind of the cars that destroyed the English car market because they showed the English that cars can be reliable.
This is how a car should be. So what I'm thinking, things
Was
like
this witchcraft? It
I'm
started.
I'm thinking things like a Conquest RSI, right? Or one of those, imagine a 1988 Conquest RSI or 87, right?
Oh yeah, the boxy
Yeah,
one.
that little boxy one with the slant
wedge-shaped
nose
kind of thing.
But I mean, those little cars were brilliant, like 96 kilowatts from a 1600 16 valve. It revved like a motorcycle. That thing, it revved to 8,000 RPM, and they were super reliable. Those you can't break those engines. So I think they were almost never seen as classics because they were always like, oh, it's this Jap thing. But they're getting to an age now where they're kind of cool. I don't know. I think even the old Lexus, the first Lexus and those kind of cars, I think they're cool as usable. They're very usable classics.
Yeah.
So they are better cars that better fit the collectible classic brief.
Yeah.
But cars to daily as classics, I think they're brilliant at that.
Well, that's where Mercedes has a good middle line because most classic Mercedes are not bad investment vehicles.
No, a Merc sedan is not an investment vehicle.
You're not going to lose money.
Lose money.
You're not going to lose money
You're
on
going
it,
to
but
lose
you're
the
not going
money.
to make money.
You're going to use money. You're going to plow money into it to keep it running and to get it nice. You're not going to get any of that money back. A two-door Merc can be an investment. A four-door Merc is not an investment unless it's a very rare specimen of something.
So, Neil, a daily drivable classic for 500 grand. What you got?
If you can find a Datsun 240Z, I'd probably
For
go that.
500k.
That's out of just because we're talking juniors, son. Because I've actually forgotten that car, but I would say Mercedes R107 SL. I think something like that would be quite cool and quite good looking to drive, and it's something that looks quite classy and probably wouldn't cost you an arm and a leg, I would assume.
They are cool.
They are quite cool. And back in the day, that was like, there used to be much less choice in the car market than there is today. Today, when you make it and you go out and you go and buy that big splashy car that you've always wanted, there's like 100 things you can choose from. But back then, you bought an SL. I mean, that was just what you did.
Yeah.
If you really made it, you bought the SL.
That's what Bobby Ewing was driving.
Yeah. You get out of an E-Class, and they go, how's it? You get out of an SL, they go, meneer. You know, that's...
You had special parking at work if you had an SL.
An SL was a huge status symbol.
They are a bit more. They have a bit more moving parts than than what your normal W123 has. The V8 motor typically, so they are a bit more expensive to keep running than a
But
W123.
they're still engineered like tanks.
Oh yes, no, 100%. So yeah, no, 100%.
And parts availability for them is still also pretty good. There's still reasonable support for them to get bits and pieces that you might need to replace on them. And for me, I've got to say, I'm still very partial to a W123, but I think in an ideal world, if I can get a W123 coupe.
It's the C123.
Either the C123 or the T123, I suppose.
The TE.
What
No, the CE is the coupe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the
T is the station wagon.
Station wagon.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be happy with.
Sorry, it's actually yes. You're actually right. I would much rather have that than the sedan.
I'd be happy with a sedan, but if I can get either a wagon or a coupe, that would be first class for me.
That coupe is actually a very good choice, or a W124 coupe.
Yeah,
they're actually pretty cool.
Also very rare as well.
Very cool choice.
Pretty impressed that you didn't go with a Jag.
The thing is,
daily drive older Jags.
Daily drive Jags pre-2000, you're gonna be running a bit of a gamble there.
I mean,
I love a Jag, and I love old Jags, but to daily drive one,
need a special
there is a left field daily driver that I would really love, but I don't know enough about their reliability. I don't think it's going to be good news because of where it comes from.
Can I guess what you're about to say?
Yes, you can guess.
TVR.
No, we know that's terrible. As a daily. And even Mr. Q will agree that that's terrible as a daily.
It is. I still maintain
But you want one.
The TVR Chimera is both the best and worst car I've ever driven. I love it.
No, what it is, it's from a different country.
Okay.
What can you guess what it is?
I'm guessing it's Italian.
No.
Not.
No.
Andre's going to pull something.
Is it American?
No. Come on, boys. There's not that many countries.
Are we?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Can I? Citroen Palace.
Yes.
I
would love a Citroen Palace as a daily driver.
That brings me to the DS.
I'm with you, Dave.
The Palace is such a comfortable. It's such a comfortable car. It's beautiful. The engine is nowhere really.
And it was in its day stupidly innovative.
Yes,
I mean,
still to this day, it's brilliant.
I mean, to this day, you look at it and you go, "Oh well, that's a cool old car." But if you look at other cars
It's so
from
futuristic.
that period, I mean, they still had big wheel arches and freaking headlights that look like they come out of a sports stadium.
It was 30 years ahead of its competition.
It was a complete mindfuck, that car.
That's funny we didn't think about we kind of like forgotten about the French. And if you look at like Peugeot 205, we never really got them here as well. That's also that we didn't really have like
we got were a bit dreary. The 504s and the 404s, they were quite reliable cars in their day, those old ones. But they,
I would say actually now that you mention it, what is it, the 504, the 404 that came out in a two-door as well? There was a coupe.
The 504 coupe was actually nice.
That was actually quite a nice looking car as well.
It was a Pininfarina style, I think.
Ooh, I thought about another nice one.
but this is
all of a sudden our list grows.
No, this is a very
dangerous
left field statement that I'm going to. I'm going to make a very dangerous statement.
Trader here.
I'm going to make a very dangerous statement that may get me kicked out of this podcast. But because the engine in a Citroen Palace is pretty dreary It's got some 4-cylinder anonymous
It's like a
thing.
2.4 liter.
I don't know. I don't think it's even that much, but it's a weak. It's not a. It's not. You don't buy it for this engine.
It's a typical French engine.
It kind of works.
It's a yellow-bellied surrender
it's there
monkey.
so it can waft it along. It's like the Italians that build an engine and they build some car around it. That would actually be a good candidate for an electric engine swap for a commuter.
Get out.
Oh my word!
Jesus.
Is that why we're getting the rain at the moment? Like,
So if you could put, and I don't want one of these silly Teslas 600 horsepower, whatever. I want a very simple electric motor that can replace whatever that's done, and you drive it to work and back. Well, nice.
I get where you're coming from.
because the engine is
But
pointless in that thing.
if you want to do that properly, it's going to cost you more than half a bar.
Not really. You just need to know some.
I'm
you
kind of
need
with
to know
you,
a guy in a shed who can put in an electric motor. I've got an old washing machine somewhere.
I'm struggling to hear you say that. Like, I don't even know what to respond to it.
Yeah,
Like,
I was
who is this guy? What have you done with?
I
What have
was
you done
Spent
with
some time in
Ivan?
France.
I was
much did you
literally
drink at lunch?
expecting.
Mushrooms was fantastic.
I was literally expecting you to now say, swap in junior mode
Alice
into
Alice
it.
swap
or
it.
Alice
LS
swap it. Which
No,
I would
no,
have
no.
been
Yes,
fine
can you
with,
imagine
but
a
the
Pallas with,
electric I was
with
like,
an LS V8 in the
So
back?
my argument is that because that car's not about the engine. The engine's a bit of a liability to it. You may as well do
I
that if
agree
you
with you.
commute
I
with
think
it.
I think
If you
it's
were
an
in
interesting
gardens, driving to work and back and sit in traffic,
Yeah.
that would be
point.
brilliant.
Yes, I know.
But there's also a little bit of a drawback with that, because electric motors are notoriously quiet. Classic cars are not. And one of the things that came out when they developed the Nissan Leaf was just how loud some normal car components are. And when you don't have engine noise,
in a classic car.
Everything sounds louder.
everything sounds louder. So that little squeaky rattle that
But
you get
that's
from the
why-
back is suddenly going to be a really annoying, loud rattle at the back.
But that's why she rides on air, man.
The
rides on
windscreen
air.
wiper is going to sound like an industrial machine.
But you're not going to hear the suspension or anything because it just floats.
Because it floats. Can I throw a last one in here? Volvo 240 Turbo.
You didn't really get them yet, man.
You're going to struggle to get parts for it.
You are. You didn't get
It,
them.
it,
It's
it
not
would be.
African.
I'm with you that it's going to be a very cool,
It's a cool car, but you didn't get
but
them yet. Not
you-
the turbo.
Well,
Get a
okay,
normal
then
one
just the 240.
you'd
It doesn't
struggle
need to be the
keep it
turbo.
going.
The parts are
240
going to be a problem.
240 maybe not so bad as the turbo, but you're still going to struggle to keep it going.
Parts are
I
going to be
think.
a problem.
Because even though we did get them here, our Volvos in those eras were not exactly voluminous big sellers.
True, but they
were
weren't
fairly
built
few and far
badly.
between. No, they're
No, they
built
weren't
like
properly,
tanks.
but you can't find the parts for them.
Then I throw
It's-
next to it. I throw in there like something like a Saab 900.
That's going to be just as bad as the Volvo.
Yeah, but you don't get them here. But I mean, from looks
You
point
got
of
them,
view,
yeah? You got
Yeah.
the
You know,
900s and the 9000s, yeah?
I think it's quite a nice something really left field.
You've got something
Yeah.
for a Saab, eh?
I've got I
Bit
do.
of a Saab for it.
With a Saab. Yes. So I saw a
Bit of a
93
Saab
sport
Saab.
combi the other day, and I thought like, wow, that actually is quite a nice looking.
Like
Anyway,
a Saab.
Well,
But
guys,
also-
I think that pretty much wraps it up, guys. I think we've concluded that yes, you can drive a daily classic car, but probably your biggest hurdle in deciding what that's going to be is how you keep it going.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think
and your budget, right?
yeah,
So it's
your
either,
budget,
either
and,
you have to like working on things yourself, or you
which
need
I
to
think most classic car owners do.
Yeah, but some
100%.
don't. Some don't give a shit. I don't like working on it. And from the sounds of it, Neil isn't too keen on it either.
I'm not.
So you either need to, it's like with racing, you either need to spend lots of time in the garage and,
So let me just revise my previous statement. We've concluded that Nico and I could daily drive
daily
classic
drive
cars. You guys
classic
are just shafted.
you could daily drive anything, basically.
I could daily drive a checkers trolley if I needed to.
Our budget will determine what we can drive. But you need to, but it's something true that Neil said, you need to be willing to deal with you. My wife has got absolutely zero tolerance for car hassles. She drives a new car every 5 to 7 years, buy a brand new car with warranty, and then we buy a new car again. If a car gives her hassles, it would be sold right there because it's just not, you don't buy a
It's
car
not
to get
worth it.
hassles from it. I'm slightly different, you know, I'm like, hey, it's a car,
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
Italian, it
it's
happens.
Italian.
I gotta tell you, my dad is very much like your wife in that sense. He loves classic cars, but if a battery goes dead, he wants to sell the
Terrible,
car.
unreliable car. Get rid
This
of
car's
it.
rubbish. Get
Such
rid of it.
hassle. But it also
so,
depends
yeah.
on where you are in your life. If you are like if you're kind of up and coming, you're very busy, you work 20 hours a day, and you're like very busy with meetings and stuff. Where I was with when I bought that Merc as a classic, I was I'm gonna do this, and it's gonna make no impact on my life. It's just gonna be a different car I drive. And it turned out it wasn't, because there's all these little things. If you don't really have the tolerance for that, the place where you are in your life, rather have it for a Sunday drive and have a daily driver.
Yeah.
Don't have it as your only car.
And the topic of the guys in the shed, right? Because I mean, one of my biggest things, me and my dad, we always watch these restorative programs, especially the ones in the UK, especially going back to the man in the shed. And the one question my dad always asks me is, where are the guys in South Africa that can do that? So I
They
think
don't
you
exist.
need to, and I always tell him, like, if you're within the right circles, you will know who can do it.
They feel far in between.
But you need to then, build up that sort of, I think as well,
Network.
like,
they call
network
the
to know.
Darvies and the Giorgio.
Yeah, exactly. For this, you go to this guy. For that, you
Yeah.
go to that guy,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
So, guys, we will be back next week with some more interesting stuff. If you didn't find this interesting, then perhaps you should be taken out back and shot. We'll edit that out.
Cheers,
Stay classy,
guys.
San Diego.
Stay classy.
Dis boys, dit was vir my harde enige gewees. Ek het voetbal gehad om by te dra hier in die soos
Nee, maar ons het vergeet al van jou.
Ek het niks gehad om te sê nie.
Wat is jou?
Ek sit by